the
Good morning. My name is Jerry Curry, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to Connected in Caregiving, a series we've created to deliver support, tips, and resources by addressing various aspects of caregiving, offering valuable insights and caregiving experts to support your journey. I'm glad you've joined us. Today, we come together as caregivers in fellowship as we seek balance, resilience, and support across the caregiving spectrum. I don't have to tell this group, caregiving is such a labor of love. It's not easy work, and AARP knows that. As a previous caregiver myself, I know how hard it is to find support, do right by the people you care for, and carve out time for yourself. We'll explore all of that in this session. There are more than 1.5 million caregivers across Tennessee, each day committed to providing care for a loved one, friend, neighbor, spouse, sibling, and more. November is National Family Caregivers Month, and AARP has just released its Caregiving in the U.S. report, the most comprehensive report on the American family caregiving landscape. I was shocked but not surprised to see that 28% of the state's population are caregivers, and also that two-thirds of Tennessee caregivers are between the ages of 35 and 64. That means most of us are also working full-time jobs. We are so fortunate to have the best of the best with us today. In just a few moments, we'll hear from Amy Goyer, AARP National Caregiving Expert, sharing her expertise and personal experiences in caregiving. Then we'll learn more about the importance of caregiving and the resources available from AARP. And now I'd like to pass it over to Mia McNeil, State Director for AARP Tennessee.
Thanks, Jerry. I appreciate everyone joining us today. Before we start, here is a little housekeeping to make sure you make the most out of this experience. First, if you look to the right side of your screen, you will see the chat area. You can enter your chats, comments, and questions here. You can even add an image, emoji, or GIF. Our team will try to answer your questions or point you in the right direction. If you go to the top left of the page, depending on your layout, you will see 3 bars. At any time, if you click here, you can return to the home page or any other menu item you've utilized and view other upcoming and past sessions. We've posted these instructions and some additional troubleshooting tips in the housekeeping tab. If you are experiencing any issues and need help, please send an email to solutions@brandlive.com and they can help you access. Okay, we are fortunate to have AARP's National Family and Caregiving expert, Amy Goyer, with us today. Amy's work is the perfect fusion of her personal and professional experiences. A passionate champion for family caregivers, she has been one her entire life, caring for her grandparents, parents, sister, and other friends and neighbors. Amy also has nearly 40 years of experience working in the field of aging, and you may recognize her from her recurring appearances on NBC's Today Show. Amy, welcome to Connected in Caregiving. I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. So happy to be with you today. I want to start out by telling you a little bit about my own caregiving journey. I know that you each have your own very unique stories, and I think every caregiver's story is unique, but I hope there'll be some things that you can connect with and identify with in my story. Our caregiving journey, I think about it as beginning with my parents. This is my mom, Robert and Patricia. But I want to introduce you to them first off. In Indiana, and the things that I can see, the flickering candlelight ain't shining bright. You can see who's really in charge in this relationship. Now, Dad really gets into it. All its fragrance from the field I used to roam. You can see Dad gets a little emotional. The moonlight's fair tonight along the Wabash. Then I long for my Indiana. Home, 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 home. Period. There you go. That tells you everything you need to know about my parents. As you can guess, our story begins in Indiana. My parents were both from Indiana. This is my grandmother, Clara, my mom's mom. She lived in Indianapolis, Indiana. When I was in college in Ohio, my dad was a professor at Ohio University. My parents moved to Arizona, across the country, and my grandparents were all in Indiana. My mom's mom, I had my aunt and my uncle and my cousins all lived near her in Indianapolis. So they were really her primary caregivers. But I would drive over from Ohio and be a respite caregiver. I would take her out to church and to grocery shopping. She never drove, and socialization, and kind of be that breath of fresh air and help with things around the house. With my other grandparents, it was different. My grandmother and granddaddy, C.V. and Genevieve, lived in South Bend, Indiana. And so that was about 6.5 hours from us in Ohio. My dad was an only child, so there was no other family there. My grandmother had Alzheimer's disease, and granddaddy was her primary caregiver for many years, but he was 10 years older than she, and things got harder and harder. So my dad would help from 2,000 miles away, and I would drive over, and I got them set up with home health aides and Meals on Wheels. I helped my grandfather understand how to deal with my grandmother's incontinence, and I would check on them. In addition to doing the socialization things, decorating for the holidays, bringing that kind of fresh air to their lives as well, but in a more practical way, still from a distance, and still not as the primary caregiver really my dad was. He managed their finances and that type of thing. In the middle of all that, my mom had a stroke. She was only 63 years old. She was between 62 and 63. And I had just started a new job at the Ohio Department of Aging. So what happens when you start a new job? I didn't have any leave to take off, but they had a program in the state where people could donate leave. People who never took their vacation, they could donate that leave and sick time, and I could use some of that to go out. And I went out and I got my mom into a good rehab program. I had been working in adult daycare and nursing homes, so I was more familiar with what to look for. And when I left, my sister came. I had 3 older sisters, and we kind of tag teamed. So this was a lot on my dad because he had his parents at a distance. He had mom, Mom had aphasia. She knew what she wanted to say and couldn't get the words out. She could never cook again. She never drove again. She could heat up some things in the microwave and some things like that. And she did eventually get to be where she could be alone for periods of time. But it was a lot of my dad, who was still working full time as the chair of the communication department at Arizona State University. Now, eventually my dad retired. My grandparents passed away. I moved to Washington, D.C. to work with AARP. And my dad became very involved in his veterans organization. He was a World War II and Korean War veteran. He became their state president. He also became an AARP volunteer in Arizona, which you can imagine I was helping facilitate that and really thrilled with that. So he stayed stimulated. He started working out with a trainer. He exercised. And he took care of Mom. Mom went everywhere with him. But over the years, probably about a decade after he retired, we started to see some changes in Daddy. And he started to show some early signs of cognitive decline. Indeed, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease eventually. But when we wanted him to stop driving was really the game changer. And you all know that, you take away our wheels, you take our independence. And we wanted Dad to remain as independent as possible for as long as possible and continue to be able to do the things, taking care of Mom. And so I just gradually increased support from a distance. Now, at that time, I had one sister living near them. She had a daughter with special needs, so she had limited time and energy. I had another sister in Ohio and another one in Maryland. So we were all spread out. I did a lot of long distance caregiving, gradually coming in, helping with financial matters, especially in the beginning, like complicated things like preparing for taxes or refinancing the house. Eventually, Dad wanted more and more help. Now, I was lucky. He was very, very receptive to help. He did not fight that. Mom's health kind of continued to deteriorate some. So at a point in 2000, it was 2008, late 2008, I quit my job at AARP and I became a consultant so I could have the flexibility to go work in Arizona and just in general, more flexibility. And this picture was taken when we had put together a desk from IKEA, which we felt very good about. And I set up an office in their home and I started going out there every 2 weeks and spending time. Eventually, though, when we wanted Dad to stop driving, that changed that situation. And he said, we're going to move into a senior community. And so he didn't want them to be isolated. He wanted to go where there were meals and transportation. And the truth was to be a lot for him to manage and that type of thing. So they moved into a senior independent living apartment near their home, and I moved into their home. So I picked up my life, moved across the country. I kept my rental place in the DC area because I had to go back for work. And I began this sort of existence of being everywhere and wanting to clone myself most of the time. My parents did well in the senior community, but over the next 3 years, suffered more health issues. My mom had chronic urinary tract infections. She would fall very easily, and she had a catastrophic fall and fractured her spine. My dad, his abilities declined very slowly, but definitely. He got this lovely guy sitting on Mom's lap, Mr. Jackson, and it became his service dog and went everywhere with my dad. My dad loved to walk, and he would take Mr. Jackson for walks all around the senior community. And Mr. Jackson made sure to get Daddy home safely every time. Mom had this terrible catastrophic fall where she fractured her spine in 2 places and had to have surgery. Now, that turned into 40 days in the hospital. And I was with her 24/7, all but about 5 of those nights when my sister gave me a break. I was working full time from her hospital room. She developed C. diff in the hospital. She had developed atrial fibrillation in the hospital. She had a second surgery. She went to rehab. She had a heart attack, congestive heart failure, pneumonia, sepsis, back in the hospital. It was unbelievable. She was 85 years old. And Mom eventually made it through all of this. She had stents put in her heart. She had so much done, and she went back to rehab and she learned to walk again. And it's truly, a testament to someone who has been through so much for 25 years, and she just kept fighting. She learned to walk again, was able to go back to their apartment, and nobody was happier than Mr. Jackson to have them both in the same place. Now, after that, Dad got sick, and Dad had always been very, very healthy, but he had a prostate inflammation problem, and complicated by the fact that he had a flap in his esophagus that would trap food, which been managing okay, but when he was sick in the hospital, he aspirated and got pneumonia. They talked me into a feeding tube until he could have throat surgery, which I thought would be a few weeks. Turned out to be about 2 months. And it was kind of a nightmare. I kept going back in the hospital because it would get clogged, and he lost a lot of weight. These are two of my sisters helping out. It was quite a saga. After we finally got Daddy healed, got the surgery, we went through another terrible loss in our family. We lost my 19-year-old niece to suicide. She had suffered with bipolar disorder. And so, caregiving doesn't happen in a vacuum. These other family issues happen, things come up, and the finances are affected, and grief, and there's so much, isn't there, that going on. And I finally decided we needed to move Mom and Dad back in the house with me because they needed 24/7 care by this time. I was, terrified Mom was going to fall again. Dad's dementia had declined sharply with his illness. And so I moved them back in the home, and they were very happy to be there. Dad was very confused about where he was immediately, whereas the week before he knew that it had been their former home. Mom was very happy to home, and I had more quality time with them this way, but I also had more control over their care. We had a whole year with no hospitalizations, and I'm going to tell you that was a huge relief. I chose what they ate. I hired caregivers to help out while I was working. I did the evenings and weekends. When I had to travel for work, my sister from Ohio came to be with them and manage everything. So it was working. It actually ended up being less stressful, which was not quite what I anticipated because I had been managing their apartment and this and that, so many things going on at once. I did apply for veterans benefits for my dad, which eventually came through, but it took a year. During this time, my oldest sister became increasingly ill. My sister Karen lived on the eastern shore of Maryland, very far away, and she had Cushing disease. She had a tumor on her pituitary gland. So I was her primary caregiver too, and her power of attorney, all of that. So she had surgeries at Johns Hopkins Hospital to try and remove the tumor. They never were fully successful in doing that. But I would be running around the country, taking care of her, going to speak at events, doing my job, and I look back on it and I think I don't really know how I did all this. Now, after Karen had her second surgery, my dad was having his 90th birthday. And I went back to Arizona in time for that, had a holiday celebration over the weekend. And I just recently wrote a column that will soon be on the AARP website about this experience because it was a very difficult time for me because the next morning, Mom could not get out of bed. And I had noticed she wasn't feeling great. I thought she seemed weak. I thought she probably had another urinary tract infection, even though she'd just gotten over one. And I put off calling the doctor until after Dad's birthday. And I'll always wonder, did that make a difference? But we lost Mom by the end of that week in the hospital. She died very suddenly because her body just could not fight off the sepsis anymore, and the antibiotics just didn't work. And it was a terribly devastating time because it was a shock. She had just come through so much. I just couldn't believe, that she was gone. And she was Dad's North Star. So he was always okay as long as she was around, And it was very hard on him. And he had definitely started a downhill slide. A year later, my sister died suddenly. And she was, again, 2,000 miles away, and I was responsible for her estate and emptying her house and selling the house. And it was another big financial drain for me because the house sold for less than what it had been owed. And so I never got back the money I put into keeping it going while I was emptying it and getting it ready to sell and all of those things. So you can see all of these things are adding up over time. My dad lived with me for another 5 years. He stayed at home with us. We tried to keep him active. Like I said, he eventually went downhill. He had visual impairment from his dementia, and that complicated his care a bit. But he was, for the most part, very upbeat and an optimistic person. He responded to affection, and when he would get confused and scared and angry and lash out at us, it was because he was confused and scared. So he we worked really hard at managing the behaviors. The medications that would be calming actually had the opposite effect on him. So I learned to adjust things in the environment and in the, I use things like lavender essential oil in a diffuser in the house, and it calmed him and helped him sleep better and those kinds of things. So I really explored a lot of things I had learned as a music therapist. How I started my career out as a music therapist. I used music with Dad all day long. You can see in this picture on the left on the TV, I don't know if you can see that, but that's Lawrence Welk, because Daddy loved to listen to Lawrence Welk and watch Lawrence Welk. So we used music throughout our day, every single day. Daddy passed away in his sleep. He was 94 years old. He had lived with me for 6 years. And I miss them so much to this very day. Dad passed 7 years ago. It's hard for me to even grasp that it's been that long. And I've been so blessed to have such support from across the country through my work as I was caregiving. And so that's why I share my journey, because I think people sharing with each other is how we learn the most. It's how we benefit the most as caregivers. My dad was a very, like I said, an optimistic guy. And I think that really made a difference in how we experienced caregiving. I think my dad experienced Alzheimer's differently than his mother did too, because of the things I had learned and the approaches that I used in caring for him. So that was my life, juggling, trying to have a life. This is my boyfriend, Bill. He lived in Baltimore. We had a long distance relationship and then a very long distance relationship. Happy to say we're still together 18 years later and living together here in Alexandria, Virginia. I tried to see my friends once a year that I had grown up with in Ohio as a getaway. That really filled me up. And then I was working and doing my writing and doing my work that I was passionate about while I was caregiving. And the caregiving, I think was in many ways what kept me going. As was mentioned, I think it's a perfect fusion for me, because I was experiencing caregiving and sharing it with other caregivers at the same time. This is just my story, and I got to tell you, this is the very brief version of my story. We had many other hospitalizations, many more ups and downs, and I suffered greatly financially. I had really a devastating effect on my finances, taking care of so many people for so long. I was also helping other family members at the time, and I ended up in bankruptcy about a year after my dad passed away. And I share that because I know many, many, many families are struggling financially when they're caregiving, and we don't talk about money. So I decided to be open about that. I am still recovering 7 years later. I'm still trying to rebuild my savings, be able to retire someday. But I don't have regrets, because I feel like I did what I could do for my parents and my sister and all my other family members. And I feel very lucky about that. I'm not a perfect caregiver. No one is a perfect caregiver, but that's okay, So I want to share with you what I learned, some of the top 3 things that I learned that I feel like are transferable to everyone's caregiving situation. Like I said, your story may be way more complicated than mine, or you may have one person you're caring for. It doesn't matter. We all experience some of the same things. So I want to share with you my top 3 tips. Number 1, is this your to-do list? Because this is mine. everything's on my to-do list. I always feel like I have to get everything done. I am kind of a type A personality, I will admit, and I'm a list maker. But if this is your list, is that doable? It's really not. So what I learned was I can do anything, but I cannot do everything. This was a huge life-changing experience for me to grasp that, because, I wanted to feel, adequate, and I wanted to feel effective. And I can do almost anything. I did so many things I never thought I could do as a caregiver. I took care of my mom in the hospital, and I did so many things, but I can't do everything. That's just not possible. So we have to seek and accept help. We have to build a team. Now, for my mom and dad, family was part of the team, but if that had been my whole team, look how empty my team would have been. So I had to build a team beyond family. And this is the thing I hear most from caregivers, is this sense that they're in it alone because they don't have family members helping. And like I said, my sister who lived near my parents had a daughter with special needs. My other sisters lived at a distance. They did what they could, but there's limits. So I want you to know that you can build beyond just family. You don't have to feel so alone. For example, my friends and my neighbors, dad's service dog, sometimes the faith community is involved. I don't know what I would have done without the support of these folks. Paid caregivers were a big part of our team. We had some volunteers who came in and visited with dad and helped out. We had my mom's hairstylist was a huge part of my caregiving team. She had to have her hair done every Friday. You know how that is. And if I was out of town or I had a work event or something, I couldn't take them, he would go and get them, or he'd come to the house and do their hair because he'd been doing my mom's hair for 40 years. Same with her manicurist. My dad had a massage therapist he had started when he retired who would come to the house. These people cared about my parents, and that really meant so much to me, and they supported me too. We had respite from the VA. There are support groups for family caregivers, Facebook groups. The healthcare team was a big part of our team. Our pharmacist was like our best friend. The guy at the local grocery store who my parents had been going to for years, I could call and ask any question to that pharmacist, and he was really, really helpful. We had mobile health care. We had a case manager at the VA who helped out. You may have a social worker. If your loved ones live in a facility, there's service coordinators there, or housing managers, case managers. We had an aging in place specialist who came and helped me make sure to make the house safe when they moved in. Speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, music therapy, all of these things were a big part of our team. We always asked for the same physical therapist because he knew my parents and he was so helpful. Services like meal delivery, yard care, home repair and modification, housekeeping services might be available to you and your loved ones. Financial advisors. My parents' financial advisor was very helpful with their finances. I should have had a financial advisor for me, and that was my mistake. I didn't do that. But also their estate planning attorney was very helpful whenever I had questions about the power of attorney and all of those kinds of things. And then, of course, the Area Agency on Aging, your first go-to, Veterans Affairs, disease-specific organizations like Alzheimer's, and of course, AARP is a big part of your team. I also want to remind you that there are people incidentally throughout your lives. In Arizona, it was very hot, so we couldn't exercise outside. So we would take my parents to the mall to walk. The valet parking guy was part of our team. And I want to remind you too that caregivers need support as well. So part of my team was people like this who were supporting me, helping me get things done, freeing up my time so I could do my job as a caregiver. Number two, keep filling your tank. I learned to look at self-care like I did my car. My car couldn't run on empty, and neither could I. And that put it in very practical terms for me. So I realized that it's not selfish to do things to fill myself up. That's just fuel so I can keep going and doing what I need to do to be a good caregiver and live. So you have to pay attention. When are you running on empty? What are the red flags for you? Are your relationships suffering? Are you exhausted? Are you short-tempered? Are you having health issues? What are your red flags? And then adjust your plan and fill up with quick things, like maybe just get a cup of coffee or have some fresh flowers in the house, pet the dog, take a walk around the block. Premium fill-ups like listening to this webinar or going to a support group meeting or watching a movie or going out to lunch with a friend. Tune-ups are time away from caregiving, which is, I know, the hardest thing to do, but it's absolutely necessary. And even if it's just for a few hours, to a weekend, to a week once a year, try to get that. And then the routine maintenance, like sleep is number one priority, as well as all of the other things. I think joy is a routine maintenance for me. It is truly our greatest survival skill. So we have to notice the funny moments and create joy and laugh and, have those still quiet moments that are also very joyful. Last but not least, monitor your mindset. Our thoughts build our lives. And I think this is such a profound statement. One of the things I had to do was kind of redefine success, because I kept feeling like a failure every time mom would fall, or I would drop a ball, or I wouldn't be the perfect caregiver. And I realized that that wasn't helping me. It was just making me feel like a failure, but it wasn't helping me or my parent. So I said, what's the opposite of failure? Success. So I started thinking of success differently. I realized that just being there, the one thing I knew I could do was commit to be with my parents. And I would not give up. I would not abandon them. I would not be perfect, but I would do my best and I would be with them every step of the way. And I think that made the biggest difference. So I tried to focus on what I could do. Nobody's a perfect caregiver. I tried to think about why I was there. I had wonderful parents. I was very blessed. Not everybody has that experience. Maybe it's that you decided to do this because you feel a sense of responsibility, and that's okay too. But just remember why you're doing it and that you choose to care. Everything we do is a choice. And when we feel like a victim, everything is 20 times harder. So I try to go back and remember, I didn't choose Alzheimer's. I didn't choose strokes. I didn't really plan to move across the country and change my life and all of those things. But I did choose to step up to the plate and do the best I could. And that takes me out of victim mode. And being a victim isn't helpful to me at all. The waves are going to come along and they're going to knock you down and you're going to get back up. And eventually you learn to ride those waves of caregiving. If the dogs can do it, you can do it too. And I think that was the other thing that kept getting me, because every time you start to feel down, you feel like I'm never going to get back up again, but you always do. So I want to leave you with a little advice from my daddy, because he really had the best advice of all.
Keep cool, but don't freeze.
All right, Dad.
Okay?
Yep.
And enjoy it. Do it when you're trying to work and do it. Fine. Enjoy it and do it. That's it. Don't plan at all.
You
give it your best shot. Lots of people do. Lots of people don't.
Mm-hmm.
You hang in there.
And the one other thing.
And we, as a group, as far as I'm concerned, we are groups of good. Period. Whether it works out a little bit or not. The way it works out, the way it works out. The way it is.
Yeah.
And do it your best shot. Okay?
Okay. You always told me don't fight the problem.
Okay, everybody agreed?
Everybody's agreed.
All right. And here's to it to everyone.
So I say here's to you. Thank you for everything you're doing as caregivers. Remember what Dad said. Give it your best shot. Just do your best. That's all you can do. And I think all together, we are in this together. And I want you to join me together in the AARP Family Caregivers Discussion Group on Facebook. We have almost 24,000 members in this group now. And you can go in and you can vent and you can post your challenges and people will help you problem solve. You can share your triumphs with people who really get it. When mom eats her whole dinner, or, you had a good doctor appointment, or whatever happens, we understand. And I think that is what keeps a lot of caregivers going. We hear a lot of people say this group is their lifeline. So please join me there. We are all here to support each other, and be sure to visit aarp.org/caregiving, where I write a column, we have an attorney, we have a psychologist, we have lots of guides. I just wrote a new caregiving guide, and we also have a new Care for the Caregiver guide that I wrote. So please join us there, and I look to find you in the AARP Family Caregivers discussion group. Thank you so much for letting me join you today. I'm more than grateful to be with you. And again, thank you for everything you're doing to care for others.
Thanks, Amy. You always deliver such a wealth of information, and your personal experience is so powerful and moving. As we continue forward, you may not know that AARP Tennessee has a statewide speakers bureau. Our volunteers are delivering presentations on meaningful topics throughout the year. Our next presenter is Nancy Kendrick. She is the training lead and presenter extraordinaire for our Speakers Bureau, and she is going to share some great information for caregivers. Nancy, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Mia, for that introduction. I look forward to facilitating Amy's presentation and taking us to the next structured step in caregiving. So let's get started. Everyone's caregiving journey is unique, regardless of where your role falls on the spectrum of caregiving. We at AARP want to make it easier. So during the next few minutes, we're going to take what Amy just talked about and put it in a defined, structured format for you. What we're going to do is talk about assessing your loved one's needs and the resources that are available. We're going to talk about formally creating or updating a caregiving plan. And hopefully, as we go through this, you're going to be able to see info and comments in the chat from other caregivers that you may find helpful. Now, caregiving may be one of the most important roles you will ever take on in your life. Our founder, Dr. Ethel Percy Andrews, was not only an educator, but a caregiver herself. And her passion was to help older Americans lead lives of independence, dignity, and purpose. And you will find these traits in AARP's DNA. As you heard from Amy, there are lots of tasks that we do every day or several times a week, sometimes without thinking about them. And if you're doing these now or you've done them in the past, you will understand juggling. And this can include helping with household tasks for your loved one, doing medication pre-fills and reminders, taking them to medical appointments, socializing with them, managing their finances, and being the person who communicates with their healthcare provider. If you're doing any or all of these and more, you are a caregiver. First of all, give yourself a hand and pat yourself on the back. We say thank you. Before I move too much further into this part of our discussion, I want to tell you about an important resource. AARP has what we call the AARP Family Caregiving Guide. Amy mentioned that a minute ago, and you can find this at www.aarp.org/prepare-to-care. And as I talk further, resources that I mentioned can be found in the chat also. Let me start by saying you do not have to be a member of AARP to access any and all of the resources that we are going to throw out to you. You may, in some instances, though, need to go into the website and create a secure login. In addition to our family caregiver guide, you can also access a list of important local resources by visiting aarp.org/caregiver resource guides. Not only do we give you general information for caregiving, there's also some specifics for veterans and military family caregivers. And these are all available in English and Spanish. So I want to start by going through a framework for 5 areas that you heard in Amy's presentation. We're going to try to help you assess the needs of your loved one by figuring out exactly what supports you need to search for. We're going to talk about starting important conversations, and from there, moving to actually assessing your loved one's needs. We're going to touch on creating and/or updating a caregiving plan. Amy told you how important that is. Building your caregiving team is also important, and above all, caring for yourself. We're also going to touch on a plan for life after caregiving. And as we go through the 5 parts that you see on the screen, we're going to keep going and keep throwing at you resources. So, get ready. As Amy mentioned, assessing your loved one's situation and creating that caregiving plan can feel overwhelming, but you don't have to do it alone. Here on the screen, you're seeing a list of people who can help. Use them. Doctors, especially specialists like neurologists, can help you understand the health conditions that your loved one is going through. Physical and occupational therapists can help you assess their strength and mobility needs. Social workers are always good at helping you understand the big picture. Care and case managers are generally very well versed in Medicaid and other financial public resources that can be available. Financial advisors can help you assess your loved one's current financial situation as well as planning for future needs. And above all, let's not forget our legal community. Lawyers and legal personnel can help with important documents such as advance directives, wills, estate planning documents, all those things. Now, oftentimes families avoid discussions about sensitive topics like finances, care, end-of-life planning, etc. Before you start the conversation for these things, I want to give you a few tips to consider that will hopefully make it easier. First and foremost, start early and start doing these conversations often, because needs and wishes are going to change over time, and you'll want to be current with what you're finding out. Secondly, do your homework. Come to the table with concrete observations and specific information that you feel needs to be covered. Depending on the topic, talk to the loved one ahead of time and find out who they think should be part of the conversation or have some input. Now, it's very important that you focus on the communication style and skills that you use in these conversations. You'll want to be respectful and loving and use I statements and not you, you. Please listen and validate what you are hearing from them. Have realistic expectations of what these conversations are going to yield. And remember, one conversation is probably not going to give you everything you need. Now, we talked about a needs assessment, and as you can see by the building blocks on this screen, there are lots of pieces to this. This is the framework for doing the needs assessment. It's included in the publications and the resource materials that I referenced earlier. And as you move through your caregiving journey, you're going to need to periodically reevaluate these different blocks. And keep in mind, you're not necessarily going to go through them in this order. Now, money can be a particularly sensitive subject to talk about, but it is often at the heart of many decisions that you're going to make, not only for your loved one, but also for you. So, you'll need to assess their current financial situation in terms of income, savings, and debt. And you may be surprised that there are debts that you were unaware of, such as loans, liens, and credit card balances. You want to take a look at their expenses, including not just housing and food, but entertainment and discretionary spending that they have become accustomed to. Please evaluate their ability to manage their financial matters. Now, in our resources, we've come up with some tips to help you with this. And we've created the AARP Financial Workbook for Caregivers, as well as the AARP Financial Workbook for Veterans and Military Family Caregivers. Again, all available on our website. If if legal matters are not taken care of while your loved one is still able to have input, you may find yourself needing to go through a much more difficult long-term court process to be able to make certain decisions on their behalf. Talk to them and find out not only if they have created documents, but where is the information located. These include advance directives for healthcare decisions, powers of attorney for managing property and financial matters, estate planning documents such as a will or a living trust. Now, if you need help with these things, there are elder law attorneys and estate planning attorneys that specialize in these areas and can prove to be very helpful. And for each of them, they will have websites and directories to help you find an attorney in your area. I mentioned earlier that you're going to need to do a functional assessment. This can help you determine your loved one's care needs, their abilities and skills in their everyday life functions, and can help you and your team determine what may be needed in the future. Physical therapists and occupational therapists are great at getting a handle on this. But don't forget that social workers, nurses, and doctors that are involved in your loved one's care can also be able to help you. You and your caregiving team may need to gradually increase services and support that you are providing in order to keep them as mobile for as long as possible. Now, healthcare assessments, gotta get this done. You'll want to gather information about your loved one's physical and mental health, as well as doing the things that are listed on the screen. You're going to want to compile a medical history, all of their diagnoses and conditions, surgeries that they have had, and dates, if you can find that information out. You'll want to create and maintain a current list of medications with the dosages, and you'll want to include over-the-counter medications, vitamins, and supplements that they may be taking. Make a list of their healthcare providers, including contact information. And if they have websites and or digital access to their records, record that login information. You'll want to organize their health information, including supplemental coverages that they may have for vision, hearing, and dental. And last but not least on this topic, you'll want to ensure that you keep this information handy, up to date, and easily accessible, maybe by putting it on your phone or other electronic device, or a good old-fashioned paper folder. Now, part of your job as a caregiver to ensure your loved one is not socially isolated is going to be to provide some mental and emotional support. And as Amy said, this doesn't have to be done solely by you. You can include family members, friends, neighbors. By all means, don't forget their faith community. And then illicit services that may be around, such as home delivered meals, senior companion services. Do telephone reassurance visits, checking on them several times a week, again, by different people. And don't forget, there may be adult day health or adult daycare programs that they can participate in. Now, you'll definitely want to do and approach another sensitive topic, which is a housing assessment. Most people prefer to stay in their current home or community. So be sure to find out if there are services that can make it possible for this to happen. Again, home-based services may be very beneficial. Now, AARP offers some guides to help you determine and evaluate whether their current housing situation or future home is appropriate. And you'll find this at www.aarp.org/homefit. It's a guide that you can download that will help you do a room-by-room assessment of what's currently there, and both simple tasks that can help make it more adaptable, or things that you may need a professional to help with. There's also an AARP Veterans Home Modification Benefit Guide available on the website at aarp.org/vetshomebenefits. Next comes transportation. This is a difficult topic for some folks, but you gotta have it. Determine if your loved one has adequate, safe transportation. And by that, you're going to need to evaluate their driving skills, so you can address any issues that are identified and look for alternatives. And these can include family members, public transportation, or even senior transportation services. Now, we've talked and mentioned community-based services. When the care of your loved one is more than what you can do alone, other services can help. And these can include community-based services. You'll want to use the Community Resource Finder that is available at www.aarp.org/CRF. By all means, contact your area agency on aging to find out what's available. In Tennessee, that's Age Well. And you can also go to the Elder Care Locator that's available online at www.eldercare.acl.gov. Now, for veterans, depending on eligibility, you may be able to get VA aid and attendance benefits. Amy mentioned that she was able to get that for her father, although it can sometimes be a lengthy process. So again, start early. There may also come a time that you need to look at whether or not community-based services can provide everything you need for your loved one to remain at home. You may need to consider other facilities, not just independent living or assisted living, but you may also need to determine whether or not nursing home care is going to have to be appropriate. Care and case managers can help you find and coordinate and monitor levels of care to determine what best fits your situation. Now, technology is one of those things that has changed caregiving for us more than anything in recent years. There are so many ways out there that technology can help in caregiving, and some of them are listed here. For safety, there are personal emergency response systems and medical alerts that go by different brand names. Telehealth has been a big help because healthcare professionals can now use telephone and video appointments to provide care and services and decrease the need for in-person trips. Mobile health services can draw blood for lab work, do x-rays, and there are tons of health monitoring devices that are now available for monitoring blood sugar, weight, blood pressure, that communicate findings back to the healthcare professional in real time. Again, decreasing the need for in-person visits. We have learned over the years to use our smartphones and other electronic devices to communicate and chat, not only with our loved ones and keep an eye on them, but also share updates with their healthcare providers. And last but not least, managing finances has taken on a whole new meaning with the use of technology. We can go to an institution's website or use an app and no longer have to get in the car and make a trip to the bank. Now, it's important to talk with your loved one about their wishes and the options for compassionate care as we move towards the end of life. Palliative care is a specialized medical care for people of any age that have serious illnesses regardless of the prognosis. And for this, patients receive comfort care and curative treatments. On the other hand, hospice care, which is also focused on providing comfort, is for people who are nearing the end of life, generally with a prognosis of 6 months or less, but that time frame can be extended. And it is geared towards comfort care, but these individuals are not receiving curative treatment. And hospice care also provides extra help and support for the caregiver. Now, making funeral arrangements may be the final act of caregiving that you're going to perform. In those serious discussions, you'll need to determine if your loved one has preferences, if they have any prepaid services, or what their wishes are for their final disposition. Now, after you've talked with your loved one about their plans and wishes, and you've evaluated or re-evaluated their current situation, you're going to have the basis and the key components for your caregiving plan. You can never anticipate every detail or scenario, but having a simple framework that can adjust as time goes on makes it easier. To start, keep it simple. Now, this slide has a lot of information on it, but once you have determined the key components, you'll need to build a caregiving team. So keep in mind that the person receiving the care needs to be at the center of the team and should have input and a primary voice in the role of the team members that are participating. Ground rules for your team should be: make sure you share information with everyone, create clear roles and responsibilities, talk about how you're going to communicate. There are lots of caregiving apps available now that can help with that. Please show your appreciation for your team members. Sometimes a simple thank you goes a long way. Now, as Amy said and warned, caregiving can be a very rewarding, but also a very draining task. There wouldn't be care for your loved one without you. That's why making a conscious effort to care for yourself while you're caring for others isn't selfish or optional. It's practical. The best way to care for your loved one is to care for yourself. Here are some tips for self-care. And above all, remember to maintain your identity, because it is easy to feel like you've lost yourself in caregiving. And you'll want to absolutely positively protect your own financial security now and in the future to avoid, as Amy warned, taking on more caregiving costs or assuming debt that can be problematic later. Please know that AARP supports the Credit for Caregiving Act that is currently before our legislators. Amy also touched on grief and life after caregiving. I want you to keep in mind that everyone's experience with grief is unique, and there is no one right way to grieve. Grieving and figuring out how to do life after caregiving can be complicated. Ask for help with difficult tasks. And if there are no pressing timelines or schedules, take your time. So we've done a lot of talking. I've done a lot of talking. You've probably done a lot of thinking. And to summarize everything that's been covered in this presentation, we've talked about finding help in your caregiving journey, starting the conversation, assessing and reassessing services and resources. We've talked about creating and updating a caregiving plan and dealing with grief during and after caregiving, as well as life after caregiving. Now, on the screen is a list of caregiver resources that we're also going to drop in the chat for you. I've thrown out a lot of references, and you may want to take a picture of this slide if you kept that cell phone handy. As I said before, AARP has a ton of resources on our website, but if you are not comfortable doing everything online, we also have a caregivers resource line that's available to you at 877-333-5885. Again, that number, 877-333-5885. And that resource line is available in English and Spanish and is staffed Monday through Saturday. Again, no membership required. If that still doesn't give you access to everything you need, we have AARP tool that is called Your Questions Answered. It's available online, and this is one of those where you will need to create a login, because you can not only search frequently asked questions, but you can put in a question specific to your situation and get a response from an expert via email within a few days. I hope you have enjoyed not only my presentation, but Amy's presentation, and that you have found it helpful. Our goal was to provide you with a ton of information and resources that will help you on your caregiving journey. We'd like to ask that you take a picture of the QR code on the screen and give us your feedback and evaluate what you've heard today. We've also included our contact information so that you can keep in touch with us and let us know what you think. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I did not give a shameless plug for our Speakers Bureau. If you like what you've heard today and you would like this presentation done to your group or organization, contact us. We'd be more than happy to help. I'm going to turn it back over to Mia for final words.
I hope you found this session meaningful and helpful for your caregiving journey. Special thanks to AARP Tennessee State President Jerry Curry for getting us started, caregiving expert Amy Goyer, and volunteer leader Nancy Kendrick for sharing so much great information and resources with us. Quick reminder before we close. Be sure to check out the materials we've uploaded into the Resources tab. And if you'd like to become a volunteer or just share your experience and/or challenges in caregiving, please let us know. Send an email to tnaarp@aarp.org. I hope you'll come back for the next session of Connected in Caregiving when we talk about caring for a loved one with dementia. Until then, Thanks for caring.